Alrighty, everyone, hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of my nonsense. And unfortunately today, not Belok's nonsense, because I have to go somewhere right after this. So he's already in his safe house, where he is a safe boy. But I wanted to talk a little bit about witchcraft style and how to find it today. So before we get into all that though, my name is Sarah Stresen, and if you are new here, I am a Christian witch content creator, writer, educator, specifically a writer of these two books right here. So if you heard the word Christian witch and you said, bullshit my ass, don't worry, these books go over that and about how and why and the Bible and the history and the context and the mystic journey and like the whole thing. So that already exists for your reference. But if you don't want to get a book just yet and figure that out that way, we have tons of free content here on my blog, everywhere basically, and we do post a video here every single Friday. And if you want to just throw a little extra support my way and also get these videos 2 weeks early and ad-free, head over to my Patreon, because on Patreon I post these videos and a lot of other stuff, witchy tips, you know, kind of Shadow the Witch, my personal daily activities or things that I'm personally doing, tarot readings, interviews with the gods, recipes, all kinds of stuff. So check that out. But now, witchcraft style. I've been thinking about this because I've been looking around online and I keep getting questions too, whether from my kind of monthly Q&A post or anything else, of people asking, can I be a Christian witch and also something like a sea witch, a green witch, a star witch, a techno witch, blah, blah, blah. Keep getting these kinds of questions. And I'm here to tell y'all that there's a difference between the religious paradigm you're operating in and the actual style in which you are doing your magic, right? Of course, you can be a Christian witch while also choosing the style of sea witchery or green witchery or kitchen witchery or any of these other kinds of things. Totally fine. The religion that you follow doesn't have all that much to do with the way in which you express your magic. And actually, it was really interesting when we were doing Witchy Fight Club. It was cool, really, to see between Lucas, Mars, and I how different our setups were, because we all posted our spells and our methods, and it was interesting to see the different ways that we use materials, the different ways that we structure, right, logically our spells, the different techniques and other things that we use that we've learned from older grimoires and stuff. Lucas was going hardcore on all these different kinds of really high, more ceremonial magic style things, whereas Mars and I were doing some more like folk style stuff. Mars especially on a more chaos level, doing those kinds of things, where I'm out here kind of building a story, because I am someone who tells stories through my spells as much as I do other stuff. But speaking of other stuff now, right, you'll notice, sure, that's what my ritual table looks like, but that's not the only type of magic that I do. So it's kind of like, we might think of it in terms of art, right? You can be an artist, but what is your medium? Are you using oil pastels? Are you using watercolors, pen? Are you doing digital art? Like, what are you doing, right? When we think about witchcraft style, we can kind of think of it like that. We're all artists here. We all have a craft. But what is our tool of choice and what is our technique and our style that makes our art unique, makes our witchcraft unique, right? And so to that end, when it comes to finding our own witchcraft style, the first thing I'm going to tell y'all is to actually take all those cute little labels, sea witch, green witch, techno witch, and throw them out the door. Throw them out. Toss them away. Because you don't need to be boxing yourself into one type of witchcraft if that's not all that you do. You don't have to only do one single thing, right? When we box ourselves into these kinds of labels, the thing that sucks is that it stifles you a little bit, right? There's not a reason that you can only do one type of magic, or that you have to pin yourself down to just doing one type of thing. Say, for instance, like a green witch who thrives a lot with like fresh, living plants. Well, what are they going to do in the winter when everything is like sleeping or dead, Like, there's still stuff they can do in the green magic vein, but there's nothing wrong with branching out a little bit either and having more than one way of accomplishing the same thing. So my first tip for finding a witchcraft style is stop trying to put it in a box. Stop trying to put it in a box, because then you're going to end up just probably trying to adapt to what other people's ideas of that box are anyway. You want to be an ocean witch, a sea witch, you're probably going to go look for that online, see a bunch of other people's interpretation of sea witch, and now your house is full of seashells and other things that you don't really use that often, but are, stuff that you're told needs to be there for sea witchery, when that's not really like how that works or what's necessary there, right? For me, myself, I call myself a kitchen witch, and that's because mainly if I'm going to do quick charms on the fly, it's going to be with stuff that's already in the food that I'm eating, right? It doesn't matter what happens. All of us need to eat. All of us need to have food, and all the food we eat is going to have some kind of object in it that you can use for magic, right? If you go out to friggin' McDonald's and get a burger or something, well, you've got lettuce, you've got tomatoes, you've got cheese, dairy, you've got the bread itself, wheat. You can do a spell on a damn McDonald's burger, like easy. So really, kitchen witchcraft is one of those things that I feel like is not even a style anymore. It's just something that everyone should know how to do. You should know how to charm the food that you eat because you should be a little bit efficient at like using your materials. Don't just go buying a bunch of herbs and stuff that sit in jars and do nothing. Use the spices on your spice rack you already have. But still, right? I can call myself a kitchen witch, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing I do. Y'all saw evidence of that. I do all kinds of fun ritual kind of magics, and I do these things mainly with the crystals that I have and the other kind of, symbolic elements, crosses, candles, any other kinds of things that make me think of the effects I'm trying to create, animal statues, any of that kind of stuff. Incenses, blah, blah, blah. Like, all these things come together for me in this kind of big mishmash jumble of shit. And that means my style ends up being less of any one type of magic and more just something that actually looks like me. Something where if I put that up in a line of other people's stuff, you could probably tell that it was mine based on the table that I'm using, based on the repeat motifs, right? The animal statues and stuff. You could probably tell it's mine and it's my own style based on the fact that I'm using consistent pieces. So right away, don't block yourself off into I have to only do, blue and seashells if I'm a sea witch. I have to only do green and herbs if I'm a green witch. You can mix and match them. Do whatever you want. It doesn't necessarily make you an eclectic witch. It just makes you a witch who has a lot of tools in their tool bag. But it does bring me also into my second tip if you want to build your own witchcraft style. And that is find the core focus and the core method to your spells, right? So as a Christian witch, I have a lot that I can borrow from. As someone with a religious paradigm like that, when I go to church and I see that we are speaking lessons from the Old Testament, the Gospel, and the New Testament, the epistles, that's like a 3-part structure. And also knowing that I'm a writer and that writing is very important to me, and so are things like 3-act structures and all that, it's easy for me to build and structure and maneuver my rituals through these consistent formats. And that's where I get a witchcraft style that is actually something reliable, something I don't have to think about too much, something that feels natural and feels sensible, something that I can pace, naturally and understand where I'm going, why. Like, I'm not spending all day on these rituals. I'm very much like, okay, this part into this part into this part, maintaining that flow of energy, knowing exactly where it should end relative to where it started, right? I can also lean into these ideas, right? I found that the main thing that connects all of my rituals and spells and stuff like that is that concept of story, is that concept of that liturgy, right? Where we have these kind of things, these lessons, and then we, from these separate parts, weave together a point through it all, right? And so when I say, lean into that, what I'm saying is, I'm a writer, and my spells usually take some form of a story with a start, middle, and an end. If not literally a story of here's what I want to happen, then still that kind of 3-part structure. And so why not, instead of have a wand, like everyone says you should, why not make my wand a pen, right? A pen with its own blessed ink, the pen that itself has been, imbued with that kind of intention and that power. This now is just as functional to me as any wand, especially because one of my favorite tricks to do is write a wish on a bay leaf and set it on fire in that dramatic way that bay leaves like to go up. Well, if I'm writing out the story of what I want to happen on the bay leaf with the magic pen, that's very specific now to my kind of style. If I'm getting spell paper and I'm writing on my spell paper that I've also infused with my intent, these things, then that's a way for me to take something about myself and bring it into my witchcraft, which is really the basis of style. So what do we got so far? We've got throw away the labels and then find the connective tissue of all the disparate ways you might do magic. With my kitchen magic, right? I might be telling these stories. With my ritual magic, telling these stories. Also, with my magic, I like to involve the ingredients, right? The ingredients aren't just spell items that are inert. I have an animistic philosophy in that I believe that the herbs and the crystals have their own energy, their own life. And in a Christian paradigm, they become living saints. They become my fellows in creation, right? If all of us, when we die and go to heaven, become saints and stuff, right? The communion of saints, then cool, great. These are my saints here now on earth. Saint Basil, Saint Chives, Saint Garlic. They're the ones who are lending up some energy when I ask as, the one who stewards the earth in Christian cosmology, right? So these creatures, they come, they help, they participate, they pray with me, they tell the story with me, they do all these things with me. And now I've got this form of magic that's all about telling stories, which is actually an integral part of like folk charms often, folk magic, Christian folk magic, and also involving the world around me, that animism. So those are my two main things. That doesn't matter if I'm at the stove, doesn't matter if I'm at the table, doesn't matter if I'm on the go. Those are going to be the things that kind of wrap together. And of course, with all the Christian tools and trinkets and too, right? The rosary, the holy water, all the holy metals, all that kind of stuff. But my third tip when it comes to building your own witchcraft style is exactly that. Who are you outside of your witchcraft? Because your witchcraft is not your entire thing, right? Your witchcraft does not define you. You define your witchcraft. So if I know, again, that I'm a writer and my big skill is in writing, if I know that my big skills are in research and I know a lot about certain theology and like certain, religious systems, then it's not that my witchcraft has to be outside of these things or is somehow separate. That can inform my witchcraft style. Something about me can inform my craft thereafter, right? So if you're someone who really likes to do beadwork or likes to crochet, maybe a part of your spells is knot work and knot magic, right? There's all kinds of like magic that's done with threads and knots and different kinds of and cords and things like that. If you love to knit and you love to do that kind of stuff, why not knit spells and intentions into your pieces, right? If you are someone who loves to garden and loves to grow plants, yeah, you're probably naturally going to find yourself fitting with green witchcraft, having plant allies in the house, tending beautiful gardens with specific herbs and stuff you've chosen outside the house in the summer, all that other kind of stuff, right? If you are someone who lives right next to the ocean and you have easy access to the ocean, it makes sense that you would constantly be involving the ocean in your work. If you're someone who's a strong swimmer and you're like an athlete like that, that makes sense, right? And even with just regular like physical activity outside of water sports, right? If you're doing like, any kind of athletic activity, any kind of big stuff, if you like to work out, if you like to really raise energy physically, that is part of a spell. There's a ton of spells that can be done with dance, that can be done with, just expending physical energy, right? That can be done with raw energy work or systems like Tai Chi, where you're kind of flowing that energy around for your own health and stuff, but where bodily movement becomes part of the orchestrating of your magic. So who are you outside of your magic? Are you a dancer? Are you a swimmer? Are you a writer? Are you a craftsperson? Are you, just like a gamer even? I get tons of magical inspiration from games like Elden Ring with their sorceries and stuff. What kind of person are you? And how can those qualities inform your magic? Because for me, like, figuring out your witchcraft style, again, it's not putting yourself into boxes like this. It's not painting yourself into a corner and saying like, okay, I have to change my entire aesthetic to match this, right? I'm a love witch, okay? If you work with the concept of love a lot, this can look like a lot of different things. It doesn't have to look like what everyone else says it does with pink and hearts and all this other kinds of stuff. Love is wild. Love is crazy. If I had to focus on love magic for a long time with the style I've developed, it would be a lot of drawing on old fiction and old romances like Pride and Prejudice, and all these other kinds of things. If I wanted someone's love to end in disaster, I'd throw out Romeo and Juliet. If I wanted someone's love to resolve itself or miscommunications to disappear, yeah, Pride and Prejudice, right? I would probably start thinking in terms of that, or thinking in terms of like those kind of old Byronic heroes, those old, those tropes, the Gothic romances and stuff too. I would be thinking in terms of literature because I am a writer and someone who loves literature, I wouldn't be doing love witchcraft the way everyone else says to do it. And that's really what style is about. It has nothing to do with, oh, you know, what type of thing do I want to be? It has everything to do with who am I and how is that going to be reflected in my craft? How are people going to be able to tell something about who I am through the way in which I assemble my magic and do my stuff? This one that I did, right, when we did Witchy Fight Club, for instance, this one I did on Mars, and there's a story being told here. That turtle in the middle of 3 foxes was me showing and representing Mars as someone who was kind of like in their shell and kind of stubborn with a certain thing in their life, being surrounded by predator animals, foxes. Foxes who are symbols of cunning, who are symbols of trickster energy, who are symbols of, you know, tests and all these other things that kind of try and get you out of your comfort zone by antagonizing you a little bit. And then at the end of the spell, the turtle is elevated. The spell is activated, and you can even it even almost looks like there's fire in the solution that I had put around there, right, with all the herbs and crystals and whatever. But in that solution was that literal acid to erode the problems that Mars might have been facing, that God told me to go throw a hex on, right? So the turtle being elevated means the turtle's rising above all of that kind of stuff. It is in a safe place now, but of its own volition, of its own merit, because it has dissolved its problems. I'm telling a story when I do stuff like that, right? Like I'm telling myself the story that I want to unfold, and through metaphor and through simile and through imagery, what I'm representing there manifested in the world, in however way it manifested. Which, by the way, we did discuss all our results of Witchy Fight Club in a previous video, so if you haven't checked that out, you should. It was a great conversation. That was a lot of fun, Witchy Fight Club. But still, point still stands, right? If I'm going to do love magic, if I'm going to do, I don't know, money magic, if I'm going to do any kind of magic, I'm not going to base my entire sense of, like, my magic around the stereotypes of that concept. I'm going to make it my own. I'm going to say, well, when I think of love, what do I think about? What does that mean to me? And where in my own personality, in my own interests, can I see that reflected? And that's how I'm going to go after it, right? I'm going to take a more dark academia kind of gothic romance bend to it than someone who is just putting out, again, the heart-shaped candles and all that, and the rose petals and all kind of stuff. When you are just getting started, though, like, it's totally fine to take inspiration from others and to start with the things that they're kind of showing off, right? If you want to be a money witch, if you want to be a love witch, whatever, you can see that, right? You can see how they're, you know, positing that and what they think love and money and stuff means, right? The color pink, the color green, whatever. But then, as you start getting used to it, you can start thinking, okay, what do I specifically associate with love? What do I specifically associate with the ocean, or with the forest, or with cooking, or what do I have myself that I can incorporate into my workings, storytelling, or crocheting, or painting, or any of these other things, right? You could end up doing really cool, like, sigil style magic, but instead of sigils, all of your spells could be small paintings. They could be paintings like this big, and then, you know, you hang them up as wards, you hang them up as imagery, or as effective imagery, and when you're done with them, you take them down, switch them out. Like, there's no one that says your witchcraft has to look like putting shit on a tray with a candle and a bunch of herbs and spices. Nothing on earth that says witchcraft has to look like that. Witchcraft is a craft, and therefore you can do it in so many different ways, right? Same with writing, same with film, same with music, same with all these kinds of things. As many genres there are of music, there are genres of witchcraft. And I don't know, I'm just tired of, I'm tired of seeing people get into witchcraft and try to figure out how to do it, and then they end up just kind of they end up copying other people because they're not sure how to get into it, and then it doesn't feel right because it doesn't feel like them. I think this is why it doesn't feel like them, because they're going on based of what other people say witchcraft needs to look like, and they're not given the opportunity, right? I'm not out here to say that, like, oh, people are just not doing it because they don't want to. No. People don't have the opportunity, they don't have the guidance, they don't have a direct mentor to tell them, hey, your magic doesn't have to look like that, All they're doing, because witchcraft is a very solitary activity, mostly for the most part, all they're doing is trying to find examples and find inspiration. They look online and they see the same 3 things over and over again. And I mean, there you go. There you go. What else is there going to be, right? But if we stop thinking about witchcraft as something that has to be done a certain way, or something that has to look a certain way or feel a certain way, and instead start remembering that witchcraft is an art form just like music, writing, film, and, you know, tactile, like textile stuff, crocheting and all that, then we can start thinking, wait a minute, okay, so what kind of art do I want to do? How do I want to express myself? What about myself can I put in my spell work that reflects me? That way, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're doing liturgical magic, kitchen magic. It doesn't matter if you're out on the road just saying little cantrips. You can do your magic that looks and feels and sounds like you, specifically. Anywhere, at any time, in any context, in any form, when you know that there are those key parts of your magic that matter, right? If I'm going to do cantrips, maybe it'll be, you know, verses of psalms. Maybe it'll be poems that I wrote myself. If I'm going to do kitchen magic, right, again, incorporating my friends, my herbs and spices here into it, asking God to bless it, right, you know, all that kind of stuff. If I'm going to do liturgical magic, it's going to be a story in its own right as I ask God to do his thing. And it's eventually it's going to feel like me, because I'm going to be the one constantly adapting, changing, and tweaking things to go exactly in the way that is comfortable to me, is natural to me, and makes sense to me. And that's what's important about witchcraft. It doesn't have to make sense to other people. It doesn't have to look nice to other people. It has to look nice, act nice, and make sense to you when you do it. And that's really all that matters. Unless you're trying to do a liturgical spell that requires other people's permission, then you might want to dress it up a little bit so they can figure out what you're trying to do and either, you know, put their energy into it or whatever too. But that's a separate case. What do you think? What things have you done and incorporated into your own magic that are specific to you and not to the type of magic that you've done? That's your discussion question for the comments. What specific things about yourself, and not about the ocean or the green witchery stuff, have you put into your magic that people can tell is specific to you and not just a more general witchy thing? Let me know, because I'm curious. And I will see you guys next time for some more good chats. See ya!